Hello BookTube, my name is Janelle, this is All the World's a Page, and I'm here today with a book review. The book I'm going to be reviewing is The Ensemble by Aja Gabel. This is a very impressive book. It follows the lives of four musicians starting in 1996 as they form a quartet. They call themselves the Van Ness Quartet. It follows Jana on violin, Britt also on violin, Daniel on cello, and Henry on viola. And it switches between their third-person perspectives, and it also jumps through time all the way up to 2008, and it really switches back. And despite the fact that it switches back and forth, and that oftentimes even within chapters it goes to different people's perspectives in different time periods, for the most part I never really felt lost. Perhaps if you were listening to it on an audiobook, you would feel lost, but Gabel gives us enough clues about where they are in each of their respective timelines that I never really felt like I was overwhelmed or like the narrative wasn't working. So this is Gabel's debut, and it is a very impressive debut. I actually looked up Gabel on Goodreads, and it turns out that she has both a Master in Fine Arts and a PhD in Literature, and it is very apparent that she's very highly educated. She writes. Her writing is very sophisticated. I was constantly learning new words, and she didn't just use like typical words that people who have English degrees use. She also used technical terms like gibbous, which is to refer to the waxing moon. And that's a technical astronomy term for when something is more than half full. So I was constantly learning new words, which I did appreciate, and it never felt like she was using words that were above her reach. It came very naturally. It read very naturally. She frequently played with musical terminology to describe things. I'm afraid I'm not very musically educated, so a lot of the power of her words probably flew over my head a little bit, but I still really appreciated them. For example, at one point when the quartet is living in New York and 9/11 has just happened, this is what we learn about. This is what we read about Jana in her headspace as she watches the towers fall. For Jana, and she would never tell anyone this, she would always connect the Beethoven 131 with that helpless feeling of watching the towers burn and smoke and collapse. The inability to make sense of the transition from the minor to the major, the way the story resisted her in the chaos. She grew to hate the way the 131 ended in a major motif that fell suddenly out of place, outdated, a pathetic imitation of optimism, now rendered truly stupid after all that had come before. So that is just a beautiful way of like describing her connection to the music and to Beethoven's work. And now whenever I hear that song, I'm always going to be thinking about 9/11, and it's just permanently attached itself together in my mind. And I think through her words we really get a sense of how uniquely connected each of the characters are to music and their relationship with music, because she uses it as in all of her description, not all of her descriptions, in so many of her descriptions. I thought that was so beautiful and so beautifully done. Throughout the book, there's also this theme of like as she's playing with time and jumping back and forth through time, she sometimes talks about through her characters, they feel like they're able to connect to a past self, and each of that past self, there is like a long tunnel of long tunnel of selves in between that past self and their current selves. Like all of those selves in between are existing at the same time. It's like that theory that all of time is existing at once, and it's not actually. And also, it's also like that. Doctor Who episode where the Doctor says that time isn't like a linear path, but a big ball all scrambled together in like timey-wimey stuff. So I really like this idea in theory, but I feel like in practice, she could have done it a bit better. It was a little bit heavy-handed at sometimes, and it wasn't done like thoroughly enough at others. So I felt like if she wanted to fully explore that theme, she could have like added it in a bit earlier and more frequently throughout the novel. So I really wanted this book to be perfect because I was really enjoying it. I wanted it to be, and it was wonderful, but I wanted it to be even better than it was. Like I said earlier, it's her debut, and it's a very, very impressive debut, but it still has the unfinished edges like a debut, like most debuts have. So this book is entirely driven by character development, and a lot of people complain that that the events feel almost arbitrary because it really is kind of like an exposition on all of these four characters' lives as they collect together. So it doesn't follow sort of like the singular plot structure that a lot of novels do, where there's build up and anticipation. But despite the fact that this book is almost entirely just character development, I sometimes felt like the character development was a bit off. For one example, Henry is written as coming from a wealthy family and being a prodigy from a very early age. But because everything has always come naturally to him, like money and family and talent, he doesn't value it as much as the other characters. And but despite the fact that he's a prodigy and people flock to him, he doesn't have many friends because they feel overshadowed. And so he joins the ensemble, even though he could be a very successful soloist, because he wants that feeling of family. But then juxtaposed against him is Daniel, the other male member of the ensemble, who plays the cello. And he does not come from money, and his family has kind of fallen apart. But he has to work doubly hard for everything he has, and he picks up like catering jobs on the side, and he teaches students, and he to afford for their lifestyle. But he's good, but not great. He doesn't have the natural ease that Henry has. But the whole time I was reading, I felt like it would make more sense for Henry to have come from a poor background and have been a prodigy, and that way he, because having an overabundance of family, which is central to his character in this book, felt like he then didn't need to search for that second or third family within the ensemble. So it would have made more sense to me if like their roles were a bit switched a little bit. Additionally, I felt like Gabel's words were beautiful, but sometimes I couldn't understand the philosophy behind them. When I read, I like to search for like universal truths and try to like figure out the philosophy behind people's words and see if there's any greater truths that I could apply to my own life. I like to sort of get in there and digest the ideas that people are working with. They can't just be flowery language. So for example, this is something that Henry says near the end of the novel. Love is inexact, Henry said. It is not a science. It is barely a noun. It means one thing to one person and one thing to another. It means one thing to one person at one point and then something else at another point. It doesn't make sense. We are gathered here today not to make sense. We are gathered here today to listen to the ineffable. I'm supposed to be explaining it, but I can't explain it. I love you. It's a mystery. Because it's a mystery, we have to take care of it. Feed it. It can go missing, but we can't tie it up. We can only tie it to someone else, other people. Then the world is like this, full of the geometry of my rope tied to you, and yours to him, and to her, and hers to someone else. I love you. It's a mystery. So that reads beautifully, but I have no idea what it actually means. Does it mean that love has no definition? Does it mean that it only exists because it lives in the hearts of individuals and that's what ties us together? I just can't quite make sense of it. And I really need to be able to do that. Words shouldn't just be beautiful, they should be forceful and thought-provoking. That being said, I was still very impressed with this book. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I just wanted it to be better, and I think that shows how invested I was in the novel. I have no doubts that Gabel will continue to grow as a writer, and I really look forward to what she produces because she has enormous talent. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please leave a comment letting me know if this book is on your TBR or if you have read this book before. I will see you all next time. Doei!